Okay, so hi, my name is Ayelet Ram. I've been doing MUN for several years. Um, my favorite MUN committee is the Security Council, so this is why I'm here basically to talk to you about how to be the best delegate in an advanced committee. So, I'd like to start this presentation by telling you the story of how I've almost been deported from Prague. So basically, we all know that when we sit in an airplane, um, there is a sort of pocket on the seat before us with magazines and stuff. So I just put my passport in there and I lost it that way. So long story short, I have been stuck in the airport in Prague for 14 hours. And that was the story. So anyway, back on topic. The reason why I was in Prague in the first place was for a MUN conference, which was an awesome conference, by the way. So basically, the committee was the Historical Security Council, and the topic was the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia. And yeah, it was in Prague, which was really funny. So basically, the thing about the committee, what made it extra special besides being a historical security council, was that instead of having the countries who actually were in that specific historical security council, the conference decided that there will be other countries. So basically, the countries in the committee were obviously the P5 members, and besides that, there were the members and allies of NATO and the members and allies of the Warsaw Pact, which was basically the Soviet version of NATO. So you usually expect the committee to go in a way that basically there are two main blocks. One is the NATO bloc and one is the Warsaw Pact bloc. So I'm going to surprise you here. The committee went in a completely different direction. Basically, what happened in the committee was the following. What happened was what we called the P5 playground. All P5 members collaborated together and worked together, and they passed everything together. And this sounds weird because you could think that why is the USSR and USA going off policy? What's happening? So we're going to answer that question very soon and understand how from this story we can learn a lot about how to be a very good delegate and even the best delegate in an advanced committee. So we'll get to the story very soon, but first of all, I want to cover a very important issue. So basically, in MUN, we have three very general kinds of committees. We've got the crisis committee, which is different and we won't discuss right now at all. And then we've got large committees, which tend to be called also beginner committees. And large committees are usually beginner committees because of their size. And many of the delegates in a MUN conference are initially beginners. So that's how it usually happens, that the larger committees are also the beginner committees. And then we have the small committees that are also the advanced committees because, again, of their size and because committees such as the UN Security Council or as the European Commission are basically, the European Council are basically, since they have veto power, they tend to be more advanced. So that's the thing about these committees. Why are they called large and small? Because many people assume that when we have beginner committees and advanced committees, so the beginner delegates can be maybe good in beginner committees, but they'll have a very hard time in advanced committees because of their MUN experience or their MUN skills or whatever. But the thing is, and that's very crucial to understand, especially if we've done beginner committees and we are now doing a transition to advanced committees, or actually, let's change, let's use different words. We've done large committees and now we're doing smaller committees. Basically, both of these committees require completely different skills. In large committees, is that we want to have amazing public speaking skills. We want people to notice us, and so many people, like lots of people, will actually want to follow us and support our resolution and be a part of our blog. In small committees, it's not like that. Public speaking skills are always good to have, regardless of the MUN committee you're in. But since the small committees are smaller, and you know who each person in the committee is, because they usually don't have more than like 20 delegates or so. You don't need people to notice you as much. And besides that, you are with more advanced delegates that are much harder to trick and much harder to get them to work underneath you, and not the other way around. So this is something I really want to clear up. I really want everyone to understand that there is quite a difference in the skills used in large committees and small committees. And with that, we will move on to the first rule we need to keep in mind in small committees and committees that are more advanced. And this is negotiations. Negotiations are key in advanced committees. They're also very useful in large committees in very specific scenarios, but it's something that we must know how to do in an advanced committee. And in case you're wondering how did the delegate of the USSR cooperate with the delegate of the USA on a Cold War topic, the answer is negotiations. And we are now going to dive into this topic. So basically, why do we need negotiations in MUN? So in MUN, we have a certain resolution that we want to pass. And that is our goal in the committee. We want to pass our resolution. And in order to do that, we need two things. We need to have a majority vote, or in the case of the UNSC, we need to have 9 delegates for. And in the case of certain committees in which countries have veto power, we obviously don't want any country to veto our resolution. And we want the content of the resolution to really reflect our ideas, our solutions, and be on our policy. And that's the thing we need to remember about negotiations, is that when we negotiate or make changes to our resolution by merging with other resolutions or making any changes to it, we are kind of slightly shifting away from our policy and slightly shifting away from our ideas, which could be a bit problematic, but is necessary in cases that we fear we don't have the majority of the room, and in cases which quite obviously a country will veto our resolution if we won't satisfy the interests of that country. So this is why it's very important to know how to negotiate in times of need. So now, how exactly do we negotiate? So basically, negotiations work that way. Imagine that I'm standing in one place, and someone else is standing in another place, and we're just walking towards each other until we meet up at some point. And this point is called common ground. So the idea in a negotiation is that each country will give up a little bit of their interest, a little bit of their policy, until both countries find common ground. Common ground that is obviously still somewhat on their policy. And the thing about finding common ground is that you want the other delegate to think that you found common ground, because many times negotiations end in one side benefiting much more than the other, which is something we need to make sure won't happen to us. Obviously, if we end up harming slightly the other side and having much more benefit negotiations than they do, it's something that we shouldn't complain about. However, we don't want it to happen the other way around. So the idea of this, of reaching common ground, is that we find some sort of an agreement with the other countries or country, and when we have this agreement, we can cooperate, we can collaborate with them. We now have the same resolution, or at least they will vote for or not veto our resolution, which is exactly what we need. So basically, this is what we want to do when we negotiate. However, what we said earlier is that when we negotiate, we sometimes end up losing bits of our policy, bits of our interests, which could be a bit harmful to us. This is why we must negotiate only if it is really necessary. So, for example, if we are in the UNSC and we've got all P5 members not voting against, and the opposition is basically 5 non-P5 members, there is no reason for us to negotiate with them because we've got the majority. We've got 10 votes, or maybe 2 of the P5 members, maybe one of the P5 members wants to abstain, and then we've got 9 votes for and 1 abstaining, and then 5 non-P5 members against. We've got no reason to negotiate with them because our resolution will still pass. And if we get back to the Prague story, so I'll tell you about the delegate of Yugoslavia, which was basically the only opposition to us P5 members. And she tried to convince again and again the rest of the committee they shouldn't work with us, and etc., etc. And she also had her own resolution. But the thing is, the P5 members had no reason to collaborate with her or pass her resolution because she was pretty much on her own. She posed no real threat, and basically there was no reason why we should have collaborated with her or passed her resolution or tried to satisfy her in any way. So this is why we need to be very cautious about when we negotiate and how, because negotiations can work very well for us and we can benefit a lot from negotiations, but we can also get harmed if we do them wrong or not do them. So this was basically negotiations 101. And with that, we will move on. So basically, rule number 2, psychological analysis. So MUN at the end of the day is a social game. We represent our countries, but we don't represent only certain countries or characters or whatever. We also represent ourselves. At the end of the day, we're people. We think like people, we feel like people. And that is very important to keep in mind because each delegate will react to a certain event or occurrence the way they'll react as a person. So this is something we must keep in mind regardless of the committee we're in. So how can we use this to our favor? After understanding that in the end of the day, MUN is a social game, let's understand what we can do about that. So basically, if we look at the delegates in advanced committees that should really concern us, we've got the delegates who are threats and the delegates who are less threatening. They're called less threatening for a reason. We don't want to underestimate any delegate because they could always surprise us. And we're not better than any other delegate. No other delegate is inferior to us. So this is something we should really keep in mind. So let's focus a little bit about the threats. So The threats in the MUN committee is something we've all noticed. It could be the delegate that asks questions about countries and seems to know the countries, but the countries we're representing better than we do. It could be the delegate who is working all the time to get delegates to sign the resolution. It's delegates that are clearly in for the competition. So these delegates could seem a bit threatening. And the thing about threats is that we want to eliminate threats as soon as possible. If our aim is to be the best delegate in the committee, we need to ensure that no delegate is threatening us. So what do we do about threats? First of all, we need to understand that there are threats as fast as possible. We need to look for the delegates who are more formal, more professional, clearly have done the research, clearly care about winning in the conference. And we need to find them very fast. How fast? Before the unmoderated caucus, way before the unmoderated caucus, because when we enter the unmod, that's it. It's kind of game over. It's very hard to eliminate threats after the unmod, because after the unmod, the chairs and the other delegates already have the impressions on all of the delegates. Something that should happen during or before the moderated caucuses. So basically, how do we eliminate threats? We need to ensure that they've got no majority, that barely any people are working with them, that they've got no power in the committee, because the worst position you can be in MUN is to be irrelevant. If you're irrelevant, you've got no power, you've got nothing. So no one wants to be in that position. And yes, it sounds a bit harsh, but in the end of the day, that's the game. And everyone knows that is part of the game. That sometimes you end up not relevant, and it happens. Just make sure that if you actually try to do this, that you are not hurting someone's emotions and someone because you've been really harsh and just a mean person. Because in the end of the day, as we said, people will react to events and scenarios in the committee the way they'll react to as people. So if we're mean to them on a personal level, they will get hurt. And that is not something we should do because we don't want to be terrible people. But if what we're doing is part of the game, such as making someone not relevant and telling people, hey, this delegate is really good, if we'll give them power or try to work with them, they will be the best delegate in the committee. Unless we don't want that, we can't work with that delegate. When you phrase it like this, it sounds like you are appreciating this delegate in some level, and you're not extremely mean to the delegate. As for the left-leaning delegates, these are the delegates you normally want to work with, because you want delegates that are active. You want delegates who will speak highly of you and who will hopefully name you as a sort of leader of their bloc, but not delegates who will shadow you in any way. So this is why we really need to keep our eyes out for these threats and eliminate them before it's too late. So, and besides that, this is kind of like primarily what we need to know about psychological analysis of other delegates. And if you want to kind of study this topic for like much more and do further research on this topic, so I've got 2 ideas for you. So, just need to organize the slideshow. Okay, so first of all, there is a very interesting psychological study called French and Raven's Basis of Social Power, which is just fascinating. So if you've got time, feel free to check this out. There are lots of articles online for it about it. You don't have to actually read the entire study, and you can learn a lot about it. Because in the end of the day, MUN is a lot about power, and the delegate who is the best delegate of the committee is a delegate who has lots of power in the committee. And the second thing that could help you, and it will sound kind of weird because it's a reality show, but the American version of Survivor is absolutely amazing, because in the end of the day, all the people on that show know the game, so they're kind of like advanced delegates, and you see how they eliminate their threats as fast as they could and how they label their threats. And actually, there was an episode that they kind of did what looked suspiciously like an unmoderated caucus. So if you have a lot of time and you want to learn more about all of these, of the kinds of threats and more about the psychological analysis, so feel free to expand your research like that. So now moving on to the third rule, which is really linked to the second as well, and it's self-awareness. So it's very crucial to be aware of our strengths and weaknesses in MUN, because the more we're aware of what we can do, or what is a bit challenging for us to do, the more we'll know how and what we can do in the committee in order to ensure that we are the best delegates. So basically, we can divide those strengths and weaknesses to two. So first of all, we've got the MUN related skills. So we've got coalition management, which you can be really good at, or it can be more challenging for you. And I'm using the word challenging on purpose because in the end of the day, it could be a bit more difficult for you to do, but it's a skill that you can always have at some point if you will try hard enough. And that's regarding anything in life, basically. So basically you've got influence on the content of the resolution and public speaking. So there are many others, obviously, just 3 examples of MUN related skills that you either have or find challenging to have. And that's the first part. So basically, regarding this, so what you want to do in an advanced committee is make it very obvious what skills you have and use them. So if you are really good in public speaking, you obviously want to talk as much as possible, show how good you are in public speaking. And besides that, the thing we really need to remember about MUN related skills is that if we talk about awards, we need to keep in mind that judging MUN is not black or white, mostly gray, and that every chairperson could judge the committee in a different way. Depends on their priorities. So you'll have some chairs who will give awards depending on who led blocks. You could have a chair who gives out awards depending on the public speaking skills of the delegates. You don't know. So this is why you want to improve yourself and your skills in all of these skills. You want to be as best as you can, even in the skills that seem challenging at first. Just work on them. You can do lots of research to understand how to improve in these skills. It's not that difficult as it may seem. Second of all, you want to shadow the delegates who are better in these skills as you are. So, for example, if I am really good in coalition management and I know that there's a delegate with me who is typing up the resolution and they're adding many of their ideas to the resolution, So first of all, I want to recheck to kind of like double check the resolution before that delegate sends it. And second of all, what we want to do is to sort of make it look like we are telling the delegates what to type up. Because because on the side, it seems like the ideas in the resolution are our ideas and not the delegate typing it up. So we basically kind of take ownership on the resolution and limit the influence of that delegate on the content of the resolution. And if we have a delegate that we know their public speaking skills are much better than ours, then basically what we do is try to get them in one way or another speak less, or speak as much as we can, or even what we can do, which would be amazing, is make them talk about how this resolution and this block is ours. Because if people really like them speaking, really like to listen to them, if they say things that actually benefit us, it would be best. Because basically they end up talking about all the great things that we did, which benefits us a lot. Second of all, the psychological way others analyze us. So back again, as we said earlier, MUN is a social game. People will react to situations as people, and that's why we want to be extremely cautious about what we do. This is why people will automatically notice our likability. If we're likable people, it will give us an advantage, and if we're not very likable people, it will give us a major disadvantage. And if we are really good leaders, it also gives us an advantage. If we are not very good leaders and people don't really listen to us and don't really notice us, it will also give us a disadvantage. And if we are kind of bossy and power hungry, well, you can guess. At the end of the day, we're all human beings. We react to these scenarios the same. So this is why we need to understand how people see us as well. Because what we want people to see is people they like, people they trust, and people they follow. Which means we need to be really confident, we need to be nice, we need to smile. If we've got a good sense of humor, it's always useful. Because in the end of the day, all of us want to work and want to support people that are confident and people we like. And if we kind of like, and if we view leaders in history, we'll see that people that they had a lot of confidence or maybe liked them for certain reasons. And because of these reasons, people wanted to follow us. It's not a dictatorship here. If we'll try to get power by being aggressive or being mean, no one will want to work with us. And furthermore, if we'll just wait for power to kind of come to us like a sort of miracle, it won't happen as well. So we need to be very aware about how people analyze us. What we also need to keep in mind, and this is kind of like why we always come wearing formal clothes to MUN conferences, is that, like it or not, even in 2020, people will look at our appearances. They won't be that judgmental, but thing is, why we come wearing formal clothes is that because it makes us look professional, it makes us look serious. So we need to be very aware of these things. So if you want a kind of personal story here, and we're going back to Prague, the delegates of the USSR and the USA. So first of all, they used a very nice trick. In that conference, we were supposed to write position papers, and prior to the conference, upload them to a Google Drive folder. So we were basically able to read each other's position papers. And the position papers of both of these delegates highlights the signs and of the USSR and the USA, and quotes, and the USA also had his signature below the position paper, like under his name. So it overall looked really professional, and sure enough, these were two of the best delegates by far in that committee. And more of a personal story, both of these delegates were guys and were very, very tall. And I'm personally, my height is 1 meters and 55 centimeters, which is very short. And because of how our subconscious works, for me, seeming like someone who is a leader is much harder. If you'll see in TV shows and movies how leaders usually look, they kind of tend to look the same in one way or another. But again, these are nothing more than challenges. And if we work hard, we will overcome these obstacles. And that's exactly what happened to me. So yeah, I felt kind of weird talking to them without breaking my neck or something because of how tall they were. But in the end of the day, I was able to get people's respect because I worked hard for it. So what we need to keep in mind about strengths and weaknesses is that these, first of all, our weaknesses are nothing more than obstacles that we can overcome. They're only challenges, and we shouldn't avoid them. And our strengths are something we should make sure everyone sees. But obviously, MUN is a social game. We don't want to be bad people. We do want to befriend people because it will make the conference much more enjoyable for us. Befriend them for real, not just use them for our benefit. And this is how we'll actually be much better advanced delegates. So with that, I'd just like to finish up with my personal motto. So we should choose our battles wisely and not because not all of them are worth fighting, which is extremely true in advanced committees. And use it and just use it for your own interpretation. And thank you for listening. I really hope you learned a thing or two from this presentation.